Hi, Nayrika. Thank you so much for being here this evening and talking to us about your policies and where you stand on running for the President of the United States of America.
Thank you so much, Coco. My pleasure to be with you.
What made you step into the race with 3 months left, running for the most important role, I think, as we speak right now?
Yeah, yeah. It's a great question. It's a bit odd, isn't it? It's a bit odd, and I understand it. There's a moment right now that has never existed before. There's an opportunity, and the world is listening. And through the Citizens app, I actually had a platform for the presidency. So I thought to myself, wow, this is such a unique and odd moment. Why not step in so that, I'm totally committed to the race, but I'm not at all attached. And, what I want for the country is what we all want for our own lives, health, wealth, and happiness. And I see that it's not really happening with the people who are leading now. And I understand fundamentally what can change to better the country. So I'm stepping in to share ideas. And, worst case, we all start speaking about ideas that can better the country. And best case, I'm going to be the president of the United States in a few months.
I mean, that's incredible. Let's discuss your policies. Let's start with the foster care system.
Okay.
We spend about $50,000 to $80,000 per child. How are you proposing to fix this? Where do you stand on the foster care system, and why are you so passionate about the foster care system? Were you in the foster care system yourself?
I was not myself as a foster child. I was a licensed foster mom, and I actually had a very tough experience. The last few years, I've had very odd experiences with the government where I was able to see what people deal with on a daily basis and the trauma that is. And, you know, the foster care system is very tough. People take advantage. The money isn't being run right. And worse than everything, the children are not being treated the way we would hope for them to be treated. And again, it's not a diss to anybody because every social worker, everyone who's in administration, they're working very hard and things slip through the cracks. But with my administration, what we're going to do is we're going to create a pilot program with those parents and families where we can. We're going to invert the system because if you look at it right now, what's going on, forget the money, and that we're not going to always forget the money. I mean, that's a big part of it, but the money is exorbitant, makes no sense. But the children have seen trauma, and then all they're getting is more trauma because you're ripping them out from the only family that they've known. And that goes through lifetimes, right? So, as president, what I'll be doing and proposing is that we invert the system. So, instead of taking a child out of an abusive situation, where we can, we're going to bring a few professionals in to actually rehabilitate the whole family. If when the family is strong in this country or in any country, the country is strong, and vice versa. If God forbid the family isn't strong, we have big problems. So, and just a little bit more about this, whereas it's very natural. When you're not treated right as a child, you're not going to behave right as an adult. So we can see so many of these children go into juvie, or as adults they go into jails and prisons because we as society didn't serve them. And that's really the main thing. And we're going to actually save a ton of money as well, not only on caring for these children, because it doesn't take that much to care for a child in a family home. Why does it take the government so much, right? 50 to 80,000, that's a huge amount. But I think that we can do great things with this new system.
So it seems like it's not only the foster system, it's also after that. Once they hit 18, what happens later down the line? And you're talking about potentially, entering the prison system. There seems to be a correlation there. Is that correct?
There's many, and I don't have the percentage, but I think it's around 30% off the top of my head of the inmates in these jails and prisons that have been in and out of the foster care their whole life. And, that's no joke. And that's with everyone. If you and I had been in that situation in those systems, we would be in the same place. That's just a human thing. You treat people better, they're going to behave better. And these are children who never were treated well, right? Inside of an abused home, and their parents were probably in the same circumstance in their youth, right?
If
So,
we're if we're talking, 30%, that's a huge percentage. That is a big correlation between the foster care system and the prison system and what happens to these kids with this trauma you're talking about. So it's very interesting, and to connect those dots and to discuss the funds, it's interesting.
One more thing I'll say, and again, I'm very grateful that the church and state are not connected. That's a blessing in this country. But I am a religious woman, and the Bible dictates, God dictates to us humans that we have to take care of the orphans. That's one of the three people that we have to take care of, and this is lending to that as well.
Okay, so you're running as the first woman in the LGBT community for the president of the United States.
Right.
It seems to be, especially in England, being LGBT is not such an issue. It seems to be far more accepted. Why do you think that is, and why is it not where we're not there yet in the US? What's happening there?
America is a religious country, more so than in Europe. And the religious doctrine, there is some interpretation that I think it's a misinterpretation of the religious text, actually. And until the people interpret it that way, we have this issue. But from my experience, growing up in the Jewish faith, I happen to know that the Bible, every time someone uses religion to defend bigotry, it's always when the religious text is taken literally, and the text is supposed to be always interpreted both literally and for the deeper meaning of it. So our rabbis teach us, and Torah scholars teach, biblical scholars teach, that if you don't have both as an interpretation for every single verse in the Bible, then you're not really understanding it. So I'd love for the religious community to kind of look at that. But again, that's not something that government can dictate to people. That's someone who has to look into their own heart and see where judgment lies and what that's about for them.
Right.
Right. I mean, people have to decide for themselves.
Absolutely, they do. What were the issues that you actually faced during your coming out? Did you stumble across anything with your family or your community that you speak of right now?
It's a great question. I came out around maybe like 5 years ago, and it was much better than I had thought. I think that a lot of the people in the LGBT community are so afraid of stepping out, and I certainly was. But once you step over the line, and every time you kind of come out, and until you're all the way out, things get repaired in your life that you had no idea were even connected to such a thing. And my family was really great with me. There was a little tension at the beginning, and it's a death for a family. It's a death of a dream, that their daughter or their son would get married and have this life. And this is a real big curveball. So I have a lot of sympathy and understanding for both the people who come out of the closet and the families that have to deal with it. Everyone is in pain there. And we're going to talk about these things. In my administration, we're going to speak about it in a few initiatives as well. We're going to start speaking about things of race and things that are dividing the country currently.
It's interesting you say that, because you hear about people coming out, you don't necessarily hear about it from the flip side, of the family and the community and what it does to them, especially if they're coming from a religious background. So it's interesting to connect the dots there as well. That's interesting.
Yeah, one of the things about that is that these days we tell people, do it, who cares what people say? Well, everyone cares what people say. Everyone cares, and there's the shame in it is never discussed, but it's quite present. And there's shame both in the community and outside of the community towards the community. So if you look at the LGBT, all groups that are marginalized have sayings. You have Black Lives Matter, you have Pride. And, in the gay community, in the LGBT community, Pride is our slogan, because no one has enough pride in us, or nor do we ourselves have enough pride to live our lives. And telling the truth is difficult because it's never popular. But if we could have a more holistic approach to things versus he, she, them, they, we can really unify the country.
Absolutely. So let's talk about it. The Citizens app. What
Yeah,
is it? Where do we get it? How do we access it? What is
yeah,
it going to do for our future? Explain it. Go on.
got it. So, the Citizens app is an application. Let me just check one thing if someone's trying to get in. No. The Citizens app is right now, it's just a design of an application. It has not been built. And as president, it's one of my first commitments to do. What it is it is a counterbalance to government. So it is a system that allows citizens to advocate for themselves, to streamline and make communication with the government easy. It's a way where citizens can advocate for themselves because they have, at a glance, you can see what the government is doing with infrastructure, budgets, right? Policies, laws. You could review laws. And then we're going to actually ask citizens to give their opinions on anything they choose. The DMV, the education system. We all know that person at dinner who keeps on giving a suggestion. If that suggestion got to the President of the United States, something would change. And this is the application where people are going to come in we have collective brainstorming, but everyone's anonymous. You give your thumbs up on ideas, you give your thumbs down, and just like a viral video, right? You know a good thing when you see it, when you hear it. Same thing with these ideas. Once someone puts it there and your interest is the same as theirs, say it's the Parks and Recs, right, in your local city or in your state, and you hear a suggestion, boom, that's a great idea. And that's going to rise to the top. To think that the government can solve all the problems that maybe like 10, 20, 30, 100,000 people can solve, 1 million people even can solve the issues of 330 million souls is not really realistic. This way, we give the power to everyone to decide what they want to. And from there, we as the government will listen to the citizens and I will implement their mandates as president.
So this app seems to connect the general public to the government, to the president, to raise those issues, those awarenesses that aren't necessarily getting through, whether you're calling in through a service or some other platforms. This goes direct.
This goes direct. So I'll give you 2 examples, right? There are 10 phases in the app, right? And it goes, and I'll explain them a little bit more, but just to stick to these 2. So the first phase is the citizens lobby. And here, if you ever know, like a big business, like an industry like Google has their own lobbyists, doctors, plumbers, nurses, teachers, everyone has their lobbyists, right? As they should. There should be someone advocating for big industries. But here, citizens will be able to lobby for themselves. So they can go into, say, the law review, right? We're going to have something where criminal justice is a big issue right now in society. And there are a lot of laws on the books that are unfair, maybe unnecessary. They were written a long time ago before consciousness was what it is today. So you're going to be able to go in there and, say someone in Connecticut or in Wisconsin, California, Florida, they had an issue with the law and that was unfair. There's a lot of people like that. They'll be able to come in and select that law and give their experience, short little thing, and explain why they'd like to delete the law or change the law. And then all of us can come together in a certain amount of time, review it, and then we'll be voting on that. So say, for example, in the criminal justice area of the country, 20,000 laws are submitted for change or deletion, okay? And we can, say within 1 year, fix 700 of those. That's a big win.
Wow.
Big win, yeah. And society can change in enormous ways that way, very quickly. The second phase of the app is where it's at the municipality level. So right now, if you have an issue, people call 911 or 311 or whatever that is. And it's hard to be on hold. They're not always there. It costs a lot of money to implement these employees in the government. This way, you're going to go to the Citizens app, and with a few clicks of a button, you're going to be able to communicate directly, very simply, to the government, and your concern will go exactly to the person or office that can handle it. For example, a pothole, something as simple as a pothole. You could just go in there and click in, and I'll tell you, probably you'll see 10, 20 other people complaining about the same thing. And the government will become aware of it, and they'll know how many citizens have complained, when the first complaint came in, and how long they've taken to fix it, right? So it's really, it's making government efficient for people.
Those potholes. Oh. Okay, so we're
Tire
not
companies are making money, let me tell you, rims and tires.
absolutely. So we're not discussing this instead of the government, right? To be clear.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What this does is this will make sure that the right now, if you've noticed, governments control citizens. What's going to happen is citizens will control the governments that are there to serve them. And it's going to happen in every country. It starts with the US, but we will branch out and allow any country who wishes to participate, they're going to get the exact same application with their rules and laws and such.
So if this citizens app truly becomes successful in the way you imagine it, in the way you vision it, in the way you're discussing it as we speak, what would be the best outcome? What are you expecting and hoping for?
Yeah. After the 10th phase, there's a simple mission. The Citizens App's mission is to usher in an era of peace. We believe we're going to hit 3 major milestones with the application. The first is making sure citizens control their governments, right? Second is ending poverty. Poverty is a direct threat to world peace. And third, we will be through normalizing and incentivizing personal development. And I'll give you an example in a moment. We will be at the beginning, on the precipice of ending bigotry. You know, everyone is a bigot. You, me, everyone doesn't like someone. If you're okay with the gays, you don't like the Jews. You're cool with the Jews, it's the blacks. Oh, it's the teachers. Oh, it's the police. Someone you don't like, some group. And I'm here to tell you, it's all right. You don't have to like everyone. You know, you can be human. You can have your thoughts. You can have your opinions, right? And if we don't stop blaming and shaming people who are bigoted, then we'll never end bigotry. We have to stop shaming and blaming the bigot. We're going the opposite way right now.
Yeah, we are. Absolutely. In the day and age, we are going in the opposite direction. I would certainly agree with that statement.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have kind of discussed the Citizens app and what we expect to see with it. Do we expect to see prevention of crime at all? Would that come into play?
I don't know if the Citizens App will prevent crime, but what it will do is, you know, what causes crime partly is a circumstance, you know, poverty and crime go hand in hand. And the reason that they do is because when you're poor, you have to survive somehow, right? And anyone who's poor, doesn't matter what color, what family they come from, anyone who's put into a poverty-stricken lifestyle, they're subject to poverty, they're subject to gangs. That's just the nature of the world, right? So from that aspect, ending poverty, it's going to do huge things to end crime. The other thing that we're going to do in my presidency and in my administration is we're going to speak to the municipalities. We're going to have something. So right now, I'll give you a small example that when implemented, it will make a big difference for the country. So right now, if you get a citation or a ticket, the way to pay it off is you could pay it, go to school, you could pick up trash, and that's about it. Going forward, we're going to add something to do in consciousness. For example, mental health and well-being. The person can choose maybe a mindfulness class, something in spirituality, either self-development or psychotherapy. And if you can begin to understand and begin to think to yourself, if say 20% of the people begin to take that option to pay off a citation, society will begin to improve in a large way quite quickly. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely, and it's interesting. So is it a form of rehabilitation Is it connected in that way? What
No,
does that look like?
I don't know if it's rehabilitation, but what it is, have you ever heard the saying, one has to clear their consciousness, right? It's those things that have happened to us that we're kind of getting over. I'm going to tell you something about consciousness. Consciousness has two major issues, and I'm going to talk about one of them, which is subconscious. A gentleman I know, he's an Indian guy, Indian fellow, and he moved to Canada, right? And you can imagine, this is maybe like 50 years ago, 40 years ago. The guy is brown, he goes to a white country, he doesn't look the same, he doesn't speak the same, the climate is different, and he feels totally bad, right? I think it was like maybe 10 or 11. And he's outside on the playground one of the days, and he sees the kids are smoking. And in one moment of despair, he says to himself, I have to smoke in order to be cool, right? So that goes on in his life. He ends up becoming a smoker in his life, right? In one moment, consciousness took a belief in. Now, what was the actual truth? That he came from India, and India is a warm climate. Canada is very cold. He had never understood that when you breathing in cold, that it looks like smoke. What is it? It's water vapor, right? It's so he in one moment, even though the belief he had was not even based on the truth, consciousness collects. Consciousness collects. And I'll tell you, in this country, we need to go, everyone, citizens need to guard their consciousness like they do their children. And we're doing the opposite. We're letting anything negative in. And that's causing quite a bit of problem in the country.
Wow. So just to just touch up on this, on the app, on the Citizens app, would you eventually be able to vote for presidency if we're talking about connecting the general public with the government and with the President of the United States of America?
Yeah, I believe it will be. It won't be at the very beginning. People will have to get used to the app, and we'll have to go through a few phases. But as I have thought about it, yes. Imagine to yourself right now what you do to go vote, right? And what the issues are. People don't trust voting polls. They don't know if they're doing double ballots and all of these things. If we were to go directly through the application, you would be able to verify every single person had one vote, who is voting, right? Everyone would know it's true because it's happening through the Citizens app, right? And you'd save so much money with these polling places and all of that. It would really, government has to be as big as it needs to be and not any bigger. So where we can cut costs and make things easier for citizens, the application will do. The Citizens app will step in and do that.
I think that would be incredible. I mean, just from a personal use of, using application to vote and not to go out and not to miss a day off work, not to have to pay people to employ them to stand at the polls all day to miss their own work. It sounds like an incredible opportunity that frankly is missing in the market as we speak.
Yeah, I'm so glad you feel so. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems is the lobbyist power. And one of your initiatives is that you're proposing to eliminate the power of the lobbyists. How do you suggest we do this? What are you suggesting here?
Thank you for the question. So, right now, I submit that a campaign contribution is a bribe, right? So a bribe actually looks a certain way. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Hey, Greg, how are you?
Hey, we're here.
Sounds great. Love that you guys are. Thank you so much. I'm going to put you on mute, but I love that you're here. Thank you.
I'm going to
I
ask,
got you. Sorry about that.
I'm going to ask the question again, Nayrika. Okay?
Yeah, please go right ahead.
So one of the biggest problems is lobbyist power, right? And in one of your initiatives is that you're proposing to actually eliminate power here of the lobbyists. How do you suggest to do this, and kind of what is your plan for this?
It's a quite simple plan, actually. But first, let's discuss what the issue is, right? So lobbyists are necessary, and we love them, and we're going to welcome them in my administration because they do the bidding for industry, and we need industry to thrive in this country. The issue is collecting money for campaigns. So let's first look at what the problem is. A campaign contribution is nothing other than a bribe. What is a bribe? A bribe has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it has a monetary or some sort of value donation. It has an interest for the person donating the money and the person receiving the money to do exactly as they say, right? As the giver of that donation says. And at the end, it actually does. So the person who received the bribe does what the person who gave the bribe wants. So in the real world, outside of campaign contributions, the law is very specific. Those things need to occur. And if they did from someone who's you're not employed by, right, that is a bribe. So we can see that there's this exact same format, same situation happens with a campaign contribution. So here, what my administration is going to be changing is we're going to make sure that it is illegal to give a direct campaign contribution to either any candidate or a party. In its place, what we'll be doing is we will create a central fund where all campaign contributions are going to go to, and it's going to be divvied out to the parties in the percentage of them winning in the last election. So right now, the exact same format is how the ballot system and everything goes. You need a certain amount of votes or signatures to get on a ballot, and everything is divvied out the same way, like a Blinko system, right? So it just kind of goes down that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to just eliminate that one thing, direct campaign contributions. We're going to make it illegal because really it's a threat to national security. At this point, it's terrible. And, the parties have gotten just too wild, too out of control, and are really not doing the bidding for the people. It's become a big problem in the country.
It's interesting.
Can I say one more thing here?
Please.
Say at some point, the citizens don't want to do, they're like, well, if I'm not going to do it direct, why would I? That's fine. We have a small backup plan. And in the bill, what it's going to be is 0.0001% of the GDP every 4 years will be donated to this fund, right? So that's around $7 or $8 billion, which is probably around half or a little less than maybe like 40% of what's done, 60% of what is donated now. So the numbers still are equivalent, but this way we eliminate all lobbyists' power.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible. Okay. For your next point here, we want to talk about hate speech, and specifically in music.
Yes.
Right? Can you expand on this? Where did this idea come from? What are you planning on doing? How can we make the change there?
Make that change. So, I love hip hop. I love rap. I love, classical music. I love all types of music. And there are many ways to brainwash people. The best way to brainwash people is through music. So right now we have a few problems in the country. One of them is hate speech. In order to implement a law, you can't implement it on one person and not on the other. If a white person says things like the N-word or these types of discriminations that you see so often in music, hip hop and rap music, well, then it's hate speech. But suddenly, when it's done by the person in the Black community, it's not hate speech. That's a mistake. It causes a lot of division in the country. And really, I say, when you are, to a brainwashing melodic tune, you keep reiterating the point that Black men are N-words, they're thugs, they're pimps, you're never going to be able to see this guy in any light but a negative light. The government, my administration, will step in, and also for women. When did women become this, this B word, this whore, this, this is no longer okay. And we have to step in. This is something the government does need to step in, because if you don't like it when a white person says it, it's not okay for a Black person to say it. If it's not okay, it's not okay. And if it's on limits, then it's fine. But it's not on limits, There was an old song by Queen Latifah where she said, "Who you calling a bitch?" Well, you know what, Queen? They were calling you a bitch. They were calling you a bitch and all of us a bitch. And now they called it to us so often, we ladies are calling it to ourselves. So sometimes you gotta wake up, you gotta come back, you gotta rein it in. My job as president is going to be to pull on each corner of this country and calm us down, right? Namaste, let's go.
So, so talking about,
Yeah, we can do it with fun.
music, it's almost eliminating the double standard that has been created.
That's a great way to put it. I didn't think about it that way, but it is a double standard. As a child, I never, I heard a lot where white people are like, why is it okay for, these people to say it? I can't say it, da, da, da. And I never really understood that. As a child, I was called a sand enner, and I was called these words when we grew up, and I understand the pain of it. But I do, as an adult, understand the double standard is really causing division in the country. And here's the thing, everything is a risk versus reward, right? This proposition is all risk with zero reward. No one's gaining anything. Everyone's losing as the way it is right now. But I think that people are afraid to speak candidly, and that, you can't lead if you're afraid. You got to just say it, say the truth.
Absolutely, say the truth. I can agree with that.
Very good.
Okay, so I did some research, and one thing that really stood out to me, one thing that really stood out to me on your YouTube channel was a series created in 2016 named I Love Trump, but I'm voting Hillary.
Poor Hillary. Yes.
One of the episodes was named Why Are the Jews Voting with the Nazis? And I kind of wanted to discuss this with you. I wanted to ask you, did you make some sort of prediction back then? What was that?
No, it's not a prediction. You could see it, Here's the thing, you got to understand human nature, right? A leader has to understand human nature. And it was very clear then that if you're dog whistling to people who, before I answer that question, let me step back a little bit and discuss human nature for a moment, right? So right now we have a big divide about white people this, and everyone has this privilege, and then the brown and Black people don't have this privilege. If we could understand human nature, we could see that, Kabbalistically, we are told that God shows up on earth in three ways. One of them is nature. So it's the mountain, it's the desert. It's like trees are actually the breath of life that we get, right? So if we look at it this way, and through astrology and all of this, what we're taught is that you actually are here to change your nature, which is a very hard task to do, right? Anyone who's ever done any self-sabotaging or wanted to lose some weight and couldn't, or do something like that, understands that it's very difficult to change. And that's deeply embedded in who you are. And we're taught that human nature, it's actually where you're coming from dust to dust. The actual ground and area that you come from dictates your nature and personality in this life. And I'll give you an example to understand. If you see where white people are coming from, right? And again, just if this is hard to hear, just give it a moment and it'll make sense. If you see where the white people are coming from, they're coming mostly from Europe, which is a very cold climate. It's a cold nature, right? Much like their trees, they're tall and skinny people because they don't get much sunlight. And then that cold nature is kind of in them. They're very strategic, they're very organized and efficient. And when you're in the cold, and that extreme cold, your life depends on strategy. And that's very important. Everyone else is from warmer climates, okay? They're just like their trees. They're, maybe a little shorter, more abundant, and they get a lot of sunlight. Things are slower in the sun. You're not as strategic. You're warmer people, right? These are where, if you look at the two different things in life, you can kind of see those attributes in life. I'm sorry, ask your question again. I apologize.
Well, we were discussing, why are the Jews voting
so here
with the Nazis?
Yeah. So when I made the video, what was important, the reason I said all this is to say that, if you dog whistle to the same people who this country has fought 2 wars, First and Second World War, to stop this, kind of Jew hatred or hatred amongst the races, that was being stamped out. And what I heard was Trump, although I tell you this, I would bet my life that Trump is not a bigot. I love Trump, but Trump wants to win. And when you want to win at all costs and you're dog whistling to people, it's very clear to see that those people for the last 30, 40 years, the KKK was stomped out in this country. All of those people were told to pipe down. And when you're giving them carte blanche, people are confused. You're saying yes to this guy, yes to this guy, yes, 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 for a vote, and then boom. What I didn't predict it, but I could see it clearly that if this gentleman wins, the Jews are not going to be able to live in this country. And now we see a lot of anti-Semitism. So yeah, thanks for bringing it up. But yeah, I think it's, it turned out to be true, but it was quite obvious, I think, in 2016 as well.
So would you say that the world is actually jealous of the Jewish people?
No, I think, I've heard that before. I think that is putting a Band-Aid on a broken dam. It really never does anything but exacerbate the situation. I'm going to tell you about, and I'm going to make a speech about this later in the week, but for now, what I can tell you is that, the Jewish people have been, the moniker of being chosen has really wreaked havoc in the world in some ways. God knows best. God knows what's going on. And there's probably 3 or 4 things that the Jews have been chosen for. And if you can kind of see it from that light, you see that Jews lead in a lot of things. You see them leading in industry, you see them leading in businesses and all of this, but they also lead in being hated. They also lead in exiles. What is that about? The Jewish people are chosen to lead. They have a specific characteristic on the earth, and that's what's written in the biblical texts, right? So if we could understand it, again, not to bring in church and state, but from a human nature understanding perspective, we can always go back to the Bible and see what's being said, right? And I think the Jews, if we can see it holistically, what the Jews are is different than how the Jews look. So being, I can tell that, obviously the non-Jewish people see Jews as unwelcoming and elitist, right? Separatists. And we can begin to speak about why it looks like that and what it really is versus what we're kind of imagining it to be. Because through dialogue, and that's what we're going to do, part of the Citizens Act is that we're going to have dialogue about race relations in this country on a monthly basis. So in this country, we used to have something called a town hall meeting. We're going to have a country hall meeting where we have a fun evening with therapists, comedians, and really we bring out these conversations. So the thing that no one's allowed to say, we're going to start to say it, and we're going to begin to heal in this country.
That's interesting. Going back to this app, it's fascinating, and I haven't really stumbled across anything else like this. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I wanted to discuss with you the Equal Rights Act amendment specifically, and where do you stand?
So for equal pay and stuff, do you mean?
Equal pay, women's rights. Women to this day are not equal to men, and they have been across Europe for hundreds of years. So I'd like to hear where you stand.
I don't know if you're going to like where I stand, but I can promise you it's the truth, but it's not going to be popular. Women and men are equally responsible for sexism. We both contribute to it, right? Men kind of get the brunt of it. But the truth is, it's our mothers and aunties that teach women or girls how they're supposed to be. Small, quiet, demure, right? When I would go on dates and I would say to my friends what happened on the dates, and we would play a game or something, me and the guy were playing ping pong or something, they'd all would say, did you let him win? Did you let him win? There are these things that we kind of cut the woman down, and we ourselves have to start believing differently. We want one thing, look at all of the Instagram and all of the social media kind of people who speak about, the women who speak about what a woman should do in a relationship or what she shouldn't do, right? It's never about what he does or doesn't do. And then when the men speak about relationships, they also say what a woman should and shouldn't do to get a man. You know, everything is pointed directly at a woman, and she never really realizes it. And to make matters really worse, in the early 2000s, women were beginning to get power. Singers came up, Christina Aguilera, all these things. And then something very weird happened. The women began to wear leotards, almost getting naked. And it was like, wait, we just thought that we don't have to do this, and now we're doing it to ourselves, right? It was when the word bitch began to be coming in, And now in society, listen, whatever you laud, whatever you advertise, you're going to want to be. If you advertise terrorism, you're going to have a country of terrorists, right? So we're here and we laud women who have been in the prostitution game. That's kind of become cool in public society. Now, I'm not against anyone who's been in any trauma or anything like that. But if you're asking for a presidential candidate, I got to tell you the truth. And the truth is, of course I'm for equal pay, but I don't know if women are.
Right. It's interesting. It's absolutely interesting hearing it from another side, another perspective, and also a woman speaking on women's rights. I think that's really interesting, and you seem to have a different stance. So it's a tricky one, but it's always good to hear.
Every society, every group in the country will have to accept. I don't look like everyone. I look like one or two people here, right? But you have to accept the leader of the country as a leader in your community. You have to be able to trust that the person who's in front of you has your best interest and wants to help you in your society. That doesn't always mean that we're doing nice talk, but we are always getting to a unified, glorious moment where everyone thrives.
Absolutely. Now, tell me something. Your campaign specifically requires no cash donations. I've not really come across anything like this. Can you kind of expand on that and what's happening with your campaign?
Well, we need volunteers. And I'll tell you, the thing is, I'm a candidate, and earlier we spoke about it, where, a campaign contribution is nothing more than a bribe. So I can't come in as a president of the United States, sworn in, having taken bribes and said, oh, but I did it because it was, then legal. No, it's not legal. So I'm taking the stance that donations are illegal. Volunteering, even giving services, is fine and appropriate. Of course, you're not going to do, the service it's not going to be a $10 million castle on the hill. But what it can be is people coming in and doing the volunteer work to make this campaign go. I'm one person who's kind of stepped up, and some people are making fun and some people are thrilled to death. But wherever you stand on it, we need people to step in and, move this conversation forward. So that's where I stand on it. You have to be about it at some point and put your money where your mouth is, right?
Absolutely. So what else do you need from your campaign? You're mentioning, volunteers, no cash donations. What do you want these volunteers to do? What would you require them? What would they be spending their time on?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So getting us onto the news, getting us onto, with connecting us with nonprofits that are like-minded, that see something in this campaign, that their whole mission is part of this campaign. Getting us together, getting people on phone banks, getting, today you don't even have to do phone banks. There are, softwares where you can text out the message of a campaign, right? You can, we need to help getting on the ballot. We have a few signatures. We need people to get the word out. One of the things that we'll be doing this week is we're going to have people at the top of a freeway impasse with signs for the website. We're trying to create attention that way. I think it's a clever way to hit a lot of people. But at the same time, I'm hoping that will bring people to the website to volunteer and to sign us in for the ballot, so we can really make a difference and really make a run for the presidency.
Wow. It's all fascinating stuff. It's interesting. You have a great perspective on it. You have experience in it. It is truly a conversation I haven't had with anyone else before. So on that note, you make a big promise to end poverty.
Yes.
And with that, it's a big statement. So what are you proposing here?
Yeah. So first, I'm going to give you a few. I mean, no one needs to speak of the ills of poverty. Everyone knows that poverty is terrible. Poverty is a threat to world peace, and it really ruins people's lives. It separates families. And when a family can't make ends meet, they fight, and it's just horrible, right? There's shame there and everything. We have two things to solve. One is poverty, and one thing we have to prevent, which is the joblessness epidemic that is going to be the side effect, the negative part of the technological revolution we're in now. So before I speak about what we're going to do to end poverty, I'm going to also, first I'll tell you that, and then I'm going to come back to describing something about the technological revolution and joblessness. So right now, you see that we have electronic currency, we have cryptocurrency going on, and we in the United States, in my administration, we are going to create a new currency entirely separate from the dollar. This currency will be worked out within the first 2 years of my administration at a maximum, and it's going to be distributed on a monthly basis to every single citizen to get everyone out of poverty. It's going to be given to the poorest citizen in the country and the richest citizen in the country. Whoever wants to use it, great. You don't, great. That's your business what you do with it. But the government will end poverty this way. Again, once we have this flattened out, kinks worked out, we'll invite the entire world for the same thing and end poverty worldwide. Now, what's very important to understand is the moment we're standing in. The moment we're standing in is the technological revolution. It already began a few years ago. And what made it begin was the invention of the qubit. Okay? The qubit, we used to have bits, which are zeros and ones. What the qubit is the ability for the 0 and the 1 to be either simultaneously. So basically, what it does is it's making the speed of computing exponential. AI is the brain of how much knowledge the computer can have. What we now call the technological revolution is the collision of these two technologies, the moment that they both existed and they're growing. That is going to do many wonderful things. It's going to make sure that medical advances are made. It's going to do wonderful things for society. It's going to have mothers and fathers be able to be with their family more. And ultimately, it's going to take most humans out of the workforce. So let's take an example that we can, that's palatable and we can really understand it. Right now, we have autonomous cars, okay? And that's a feature that people want to have in all of this. But soon society will see and notice that if we make it a law that for everyday driving, we should have autonomous cars and collisions, 30,000 people die every year on the roads in this country, right? So once that happens, say that law passes in 2 years, okay? There are 8.5 million people in trucking alone. Most of those people, those jobs will be gone overnight. Probably 2 or 3 times of that in regular driving vehicles, the Uber drivers, the Lyft, all of those things, right? But then you have to realize I'm a businesswoman, right? In business is an ecosystem. Business, just like a forest, all the trees are connected and underneath, business is the same. And when one business falls, they're all going to fall. And that's a good thing if we're prepared. So let's see. Once, say, overnight, all cars have to be legally autonomous, right? Old and new cars. What industries will fall? We just lost all of auto insurance. The whole industry fell. Maybe 95% of all collision repair is gone. We don't need it. There's not going to be that many collisions, right? Then you go into the paper mills that sell the paper to the insurance industry. They lost so much business, and on and on. The tickets that the municipalities collect, your car will drop you off, pick you up, and go sit in a place that is not going to get a ticket. So once you begin to kind of see what's going on, you can begin to see, wait, if we wait and we wait for a president in the next 4 years, you're going to have joblessness like you couldn't imagine in the next 4 years. It's going to happen overnight. So my position is, let us solve both this problem of poverty, and simultaneously we're going to prevent this tsunami of joblessness.
Fascinating. Really. I mean,
I'm so
it's been an
happy.
interesting one. I think we've both learned a lot here tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
And where you stand is just you have a very unique and interesting stance. I want to thank you so much for joining us this evening, speaking with us, and I wish you luck in your presidential campaign. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Can we ask, because we do have a guest, can we see if we have any questions from Mr. Gregory here? Let's just ask on mute.
Sorry, I got that baby here. Look.
Hey, oh, how sweet. We love you. Hello. Hi. So sweet. Do you have any questions before we go, Gregory?
Presidency.
Huh?
Aiden said N4P.
There we go. Nayrika for president. Let's go. Thank you so much for coming and listening. Thank you so much, Coco. Really appreciate you both.
Of course, all the best.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Yeah, can't wait. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Coco,
Bye.
thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, and it's been a fascinating time.
Absolutely.
Cool. Bye-bye.